and welcome. I'm Anand Naidu, sitting in for Riz Khan. The party that dominates South African politics, the African National Congress, is holding its Congress and elections for a new leadership at its annual conference this week. The decisions will affect the direction of the country for years to come. The ANC's next leader could be South Africa's future president. The current president and head of the ANC, Thabo Mbeki, is seeking to hold on to his leadership position, but he's trailing behind his former close aide, Jacob Zuma, who has the support of grassroots members and unions. The tension between the two men has already delayed the vote among the 4,000 delegates who are meeting in the northern South African town of Polokwane. The leadership battle has deeply divided the ANC. Today we look at what's at stake in Polokwane. Don't forget, we take your questions and comments on the show. You can reach us at the numbers there at the bottom of your screen. Joining us now from Polokwane is Jovial Rantau, editor of the Sunday Independent newspaper and chairman of the South African National Editors Forum. Jovial, welcome to the show.
Hello Anand, nice to speak to you, South African.
Well, welcome. Let me ask you this. We seem to be looking at a very bitter leadership contest here in Polokwane at the ANC's Congress. I was wondering if you could tell me why this leadership contest is so important for South Africa.
I think the issue of who is going to be the next president of the ANC and the next president of this country is important to South Africa because this is the person who's going to guide the ruling party. This is the person who's going to run our lives for the next 5 years. So this conference is much more important than many other conferences that we've seen because for the first time the position of ANC president is contested. In the past conferences we've had arrangements where the ANC has gone into conferences with an arranged and an agreed upon list. And this time Thabo Mbeki is being challenged quite strongly, I should add, by Jacob Zuma, his deputy at the moment.
So the situation as it stands is that the president in South Africa is not directly elected, and it's tradition that the leader of the ANC does become the president.
Yes, as things stand, whoever becomes the ANC president at this conference would then become the president of South Africa when the elections are held in 2009. If you look at the current levels of support for the ANC, there can be no doubt that when the 2009 elections are held, the ANC will win. The party currently holds more than a two-thirds majority in parliament, and Jacob Zuma, if he wins, should become the next president of this country.
Looking at this contest that's taking place there, we have Thabo Mbeki on the one side, we have Jacob Zuma on the other side. Is this division between these two men symbolic of deeper divisions within the ANC?
Well, Anand, you know, the ANC has never gone into a conference as divided as it did going into this one. The stakes are high. On the first day of conference, we have seen open defiance, disrespect to leaders, something that is unheard of, something which delegates here have described as an ANC. What has led to all of this is what delegates here say is a failure by Thabo Mbeki to step down after serving 2 consecutive terms as ANC president. The president has already said that he's not going to stand as for a 3rd term as the ANC as South Africa's president, but he is willing to stand for a 3rd term as ANC president, and that has angered a lot of ANC delegates who are voting, who want to vote out of office. What is important here is that Thabo Mbeki for a whole lot of South Africans represents stability, and Jacob Zuma is a closed book. Mr. Zuma, of course, also has big problems legally and also from his personality point of view. He's a guy who's very popular. He's a guy who's got the support of the delegates, but also he's a guy who's been in the course more than he's been out of the course. So the delegates today and probably tomorrow will have to decide on whether they want to elect someone with the problem that Jacob Zuma has or opt for some kind of continuity in Thabo Mbeki.
Well, let's just look beyond the divisions between these two men, or I should say between these two personalities. In terms of policy, where does the fault line lie. What divides the ANC insofar as policy is concerned between these two leaders?
Well, you'll be surprised that there isn't really a major chasm. There aren't major differences when it comes to policy. You know, the ANC policy conference adopted a few positions of policy, and the big chasm here is the presidential contest. You know, in terms of policy, the only difference that we see is between the ANC and its alliance partners, the Trade Union Federation, COSATU, and the SA Communist Party, who have major problems from an ideological point of view with the economic position of the ANC, because they would, because of their political standing, they would want to push for more leftist policy positions, while the ANC is more for more center to right positions. Now, the only challenge that the ANC can face from a policy positions will be from the Trade Union COSATU and SACP, and these are the people who have been the main sponsors, the main supporters of Jacob Zuma in his campaign to become the next president. So if Jacob Zuma was to become president, there's likely to be a lot of pressure from the unions, from the Communist Party, for more leftist, socialist positions, and that on its own is likely to be met with even a stiffer resistance from traditional ANC cadres who would want to keep the ANC where it is at the moment, maintain the political stability, economic stability in South Africa.
You know, Jovial, there are analysts in South Africa who believe that Jacob Zuma, on the one hand, represents the more grassroots members of the ANC. He represents those who have not got much out of the ANC insofar as what the government has been doing for the last, 14 years or so. And there are others who believe that Thabo Mbeki represents the black elite in South Africa, and that ultimately the ANC will split along those lines. It won't happen at this Congress, or it won't happen before the next election, but ultimately the ANC will split. Do you think that's a valid judgment?
Well, I think it's an analysis that have got some validity in it, because Thabo Mbeki is a different political animal from Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma is your popular leader, you know, he's your pop leader, he talks the language of the people, he comes across as a people's man, he identifies with ordinary South Africans, while Thabo Mbeki, although he has tried in the last few years to change that image, he has really come across as a businessman, somebody who is aloof, somebody who does not identify so much with people on the ground, but with your middle class and your elite. And that, to a large extent, is something that has worked against Thabo Mbeki. But to my mind, it does not mean that he has not been a good president for South Africa. I think he's been a great president in the way he's managed government, he's managed the economy. But the questions that are being asked here at this conference is whether, as political head of the ruling party, whether he's managed that party well. And the feedback coming from the delegates is that he hasn't done that well. And I think this is something that he himself has admitted, the Secretary General has admitted, and then I think the ANC going forward has got a lot of work to do, because it went into this conference a divided house, and whoever, whether it's Thabo Mbeki or Zuma, whoever takes over this organization has got a lot of work to unite a party that has still got a lot of work to do in South Africa. You know, South Africa is a country that is doing well, but we still have huge problems with poverty, we still have huge problems with HIV and AIDS, and this is something that whoever takes over that we'll have to look at.
You know, when you look at Thabo Mbeki and you look at South Africa, especially the economy, as you pointed out right now, has done extremely well under Thabo Mbeki. There's been sustained growth ever since the ANC took over in South Africa. But why is he so unpopular? What exactly are people blaming him for? I mean, we do know that he's made some decisions that, as you point out as well, he admits were wrong. But what exactly are people unhappy with?
I think there's great unhappiness in the way that he's managed the party, that is the ANC. I think that in the many structures of the ANC in the provinces, that Thabo Mbeki has made a lot of enemies for himself. In fact, one of the local analysts was saying that the provincial structures of the ANC are littered with corpses, political corpses of Thabo Mbeki. But you know, there were problems that the ANC experienced in its infancy into democracy, when a lot of people were fighting for positions. People were seeing positions in the ANC as a stepping stone to positions in government. And the president of the ANC, that is Thabo Mbeki, was forced to do certain things to stem this. But those very actions that he took to try and stop infighting are today being used against him to say that he centralized power. He's done all of these things to micromanage the ANC. But the big sense that is coming through is that his biggest sin to ANC members seem to be in his inability to realize that he served the party for the 10 years as leader, and that it's time for him to step down and give a new leadership a chance.
Okay, Jovial, let me ask you this. Yes, I'm here. Let me ask you this. Since those landmark elections in 1994, which brought the ANC to power, has the gap between rich and poor in South Africa widened, or has it narrowed?
Anand, it has. You know, the black economic empowerment programs of government.
Sorry, Jovial. When you say it has, do you mean it has widened or has it narrowed?
No, I think it has widened.
Okay.
I think it has widened. The poverty, the gap between the rich and the poor has widened. You know, we have seen in very good numbers the growth of the black middle class, which in its own right is a very good thing, because it means that, you know, some good things are happening. But what is happening is that at the bottom, you know, the poorest of the poor, their numbers are increasing, and that gap is not closing. And that is the biggest challenge, you know, fighting poverty and lifting those people out of the poverty pit. That is the problem, biggest problem that this government faces, because that problem relates directly to other problems that we face in HIV and AIDS, in education and human resource development, which links directly to the skills problems that we have.
Let's look at Jacob Zuma for a moment. Not much is known about him beyond South Africa, except for the fact that he faced charges in a rape case. He's also facing charges in a corruption case rather. Who is Jacob Zuma?
You know, Jacob Zuma's story is one fantastic South African story. You know, this is a guy who used to herd cattle, who used to be a shepherd in rural KwaZulu-Natal. He joined the ANC at a very young age. He didn't go to school. He went to Robben Island after being jailed by the apartheid government for his involvement in politics. In Robben Island, he taught himself how to read and write. He taught himself politics. And indeed, you know, if Jacob Zuma showed anything, is that he's a very intelligent man. He went on to join the ANC in exile, where he rose within the ranks until he became the head of intelligence. When the ANC was really unbanned, he came back as Deputy Secretary General of the ANC. And at the ANC Congress of the ANC, he was nominated and elected as Deputy President of the ANC. And that was the beginning of Jacob Zuma's rise to power. And indeed, if Jacob Zuma was to be elected as President of the ANC now, it will really be a fairy tale South African story of a shepherd, a boy who was born in rural KwaZulu-Natal, who had no education, and who went on to become president.
Okay, we're talking to Jovial Rentao. He's the editor of the Sunday Independent newspaper in South Africa and chairman of the South African National Editors Forum. We are talking about the ANC Congress, which is taking place in the northern South African town of Polokwane this week. That Congress will decide in an election the new leader of the ANC, and by tradition that leader normally becomes the next president of South Africa. So it's a key time for South Africa when the country will see who its new leader will be. The ANC's next leader, as I pointed out, could be the future president. The current president and head of the ANC, Thabo Mbeki, is seeking to hold on to that leadership position, but he's trailing behind Jacob Zuma, the former deputy president and a close aide to Thabo Mbeki. Jacob Zuma has the support of grassroots members of the ruling African National Congress. He also has the support of key trades unions in South Africa. Now, the tension between these two men has already delayed that vote for the new leader among the 4,000 delegates who are there at that town in Polokwane in northern South Africa. They're meeting for this leadership battle that has divided the ANC very, very deeply. Well, we rejoin Jovial Rantau now. Jovial, I was wondering if you could tell me, you were talking about Jacob Zuma there, if you could tell me about his politics. A South African news magazine, the Financial Mail, ran a cover story, I think about a week ago, the headline on that cover story was "Be Afraid." Is the business community afraid of a Zuma presidency?
I think the fear is really emanates from Jacob Zuma's links with the left, because the left will be demanding that Mr. Zuma, if he becomes president, and he must pay them back for their support by introducing policies which will be friendly to the workers, policies which will be friendly to the poorest of the poor. Now, the Mbeki government is the government that has tried very much to listen and do what the workers want, but also to give an ear to capital. And any move to address or overemphasize or give weight to the interest of the workers over the rights of business or capital is likely to drive fear into the hearts of people. And also the other big problem that Jacob Zuma faces is that with his legal problems, there's doubt about whether or not he will have the time to be president in this country. And also his legal problems, their source are some
Jovial, sorry.
things
Jovial,
that raise the questions.
My apologies, I'm going to have to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
We've run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right, thanks, Anand, and nice to talk to you.
Thank you. And thanks for being with us. On the next show, we'll speak with a Washington power couple who have written about their marriage, which not only crosses racial lines, but party lines as well. Former Defense Secretary William Cohen and his wife Janet will be joining us to discuss their book, Love in Black and White. Don't forget, if you have any thoughts about pressing issues around the world, send us your emails to riz@aljazeera.net. See you next time.